Welcome to the Histories of Northamptonshire podcast series, and this episode number 86. Recorded on location, each episode tells the story of one of the many and varied objects which are the focus of the exhibition A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects. The exhibition runs at the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery between the 20th of September 2025 and February 2026. Selected by local individuals, heritage groups and the museum's own curators, each object tells a different story from the county's past. And so, to our guest for this episode.
My name's John Paul Carr, and I'm one of the committee members for Rushden Museum.
And the object that we're talking about for this particular podcast is what?
It's the school clock from the school hall at Alfred Street School in Rushden.
Now, why is that a significant object to have in the exhibition?
Well, the key thing about it is its presence in a moment in time in the Second World War. The start of the war was a phony war. There was evacuees who left places like London, and in Rushden's case, people from Colchester. Of course, Colchester was a big military base. We had in Rushden not just pupils at Alfred Street School from the town, but also those evacuees who had come to the town. In 1940, the Battle of Britain took place. This was the very first battle which was fought in the air. And if we hadn't have won the Battle of Britain, all sorts of things could have changed history for us. On the 3rd of October, mid-morning, there was a daylight raid on Rushden by the German Luftwaffe, which was the Air Force from Germany. And it dropped a series of bombs right along the high street. So you can imagine mid-morning, people are at work in the factories, in the shops, out shopping. The first bomb landed near to the gasworks, and Rushden luckily missed it, because you can imagine if it hit the gasworks it would have gone up. The next one just missed the railway station, and one by one these bombs dropped. The next one landed on a fish and chip shop in the town and almost totally destroyed it. The next one landed on the sports ground of a local shoe factory. The next one landed on the shoe factory itself and killed several men at work. The next one landed right in front of Alfred Street School, with the next one landing in the playground. If it had only been a few minutes later, the children would have been out in the playground playing. And then there were several other bombs which were dropped. So chaos happened in the town. You can imagine people realising that the school had been hit, that their child or the children they were looking after as an evacuee could have been injured, and people came from all directions to the school. Now, of course, the school clock was in the school hall, and it stopped at the time of the bombing, which was 10:12 a.m. 15 years ago, there was a lot of research done and people were interviewed about their memories about being at the school. We're now talking about people who are at the school, they'd be in their 90s now. But one of the most interesting things is the school logbook. So the headmaster at the school was required to keep a day-to-day diary of the activities which took place at the school. It could be good or bad news, it could be situations, people being ill or something. But the most striking is the day of the bombing, because he wrote in the school logbook, at 10:12 a.m, without warning, 2 high explosive bombs fell on the premises. The final struck the classroom occupied by Class 10 Standard 2B and 3B. 46 children were on the roll, but 39 were present. The teacher in charge, Miss Wright. The classroom and the waiting room above were completely wrecked by the explosion, which caused the total collapse of the street wall. It is possible that the bomb entered the classroom, falling through the window and making a deep crater in the farthest corner among the children. All the furniture was smashed, not a desk remaining whole, except for windows in the demolished wall. All the glass covered with fabric remained unbroken. There was a lot of injuries for children who were taken off to the first aid post, which was at Moor Road School in the town. Several children died as a result, and these were children who were 7 and 8 years old. Several of the children went off to Northampton Hospital, where they died several hours later. 2 of those children, a little girl by the name of Lorna Payne and another little girl by the name of Celia Chase, were the evacuees from Colchester. They had to get the headmaster from the school in Colchester to come up to identify the children, and those 2 children then were taken back to Colchester to be buried. The children who came from Rushden, a little girl by the name of Margaret Dobbs, a little boy by the name of Dennis Felse, Muriel Moy, Roy Odell and Donald Scriven, were all laid to rest in Newton Road Cemetery in Rushden.
John Paul, do we know why Rushden was targeted?
Well, this was a daylight raid. I don't think it was intentionally targeted. What the Luftwaffe had to do is, if they came off track, they had to get rid of their bombs. They saw the gasworks, they saw the railway line, they could see factories. They just pressed the button and dropped the bombs and then headed home.
You mentioned that the clock stopped when the bombs struck. What happened to the clock after the raid itself? It's remarkable that it survived at all.
The clock itself is obviously older than the wartime. It was made by a gentleman from Rushden who had a clockmaking business in the town. Probably before the First World War it was made. The clock was removed, it was stored away. A local historian from the town, a gentleman by the name of Eric Fole, used to do a lot of work at the school, and he discovered it and he asked if he could have it, and he took it home and he had it on his wall, never went. And the thing about Eric was he was actually at the school when the bombing happened. He was an 11-year-old boy and he'd got very distinct memories of it. Eric died a number of years ago and the clock came into the museum's collection. So it's not just a clock, it has a story attached to it, a moment in time to do with our past in the Second World War.
A moment in time, an instant when the clock stopped. Was it rendered unusable by the force of the explosion?
We haven't messed around with it, and Eric didn't mess around with it either, so it's been kept in its original state as it was in 1940.
So it literally documented that moment in time?
It did. The other really important thing about it is it was the first school to be hit in the Second World War when sadly children died as a result of that kind of bombing. So it's unique in that respect.
You're very much of the local area. Clearly this was a very dark day for the town. It caused not only the destruction from the raid, but also the anguish that then followed the loss of life. What's your reaction to the clock which witnessed all of this and then just stopped at that moment?
It has a face on it and it has hands moving. To think that it sat on that wall in that hall and observed or watched the horror which was taking place, but how calmly the children dealt with things. They all marched out of the school because they'd all had air raid practice. You know, they had the register taken. In the school logbooks, it talks about how calm the children were and how proud the headmaster was of them in the way that they conducted themselves following that incident. The clock as an object, it's that moment in time, that moment in history that timepiece really displays.
It's fascinating that the clock should play the role that it did amongst so much destruction as a silent witness, or a witness that became silent as the bombs dropped, clearly marking a tragic chapter in Rushden's life, and appropriate therefore that it should be part of this particular exhibition. Clearly memories are still bright of that era, and families and descendants are still very much aware of that particular moment in Rushden's life, and the fact that it's been documented by this clock, right therefore that it should be part of this exhibition. John Paul, thank you for telling me the story.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you for listening to this Histories of Northamptonshire podcast. If you would like to find out more about the objects or listen to other episodes in the series, go to www.northamptonmuseums.com. Alternatively, you can visit the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, where you can see the A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects exhibition for yourself. The Histories of Northamptonshire project is funded by Arts Council England as part of the National Portfolio Programme.